Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special festive edition of the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Since this episode is being released on Christmas Day, in order to keep up with our Saturday release schedule and keep to my commitment of being consistent with the output of the podcast, I thought that it probably wouldn't be fair to have a traditional guest onto the show because I've got no idea who's actually going to listen to this. Certainly, I don't expect anybody to be listening to it on Christmas Day itself. So I thought actually in the spirit of Christmas, I would give a gift with this episode. And it's actually a gift which hopefully you guys in the audience will appreciate as well. But it's a bit of a gift to myself because if there were one person I'd love to be able to interview on the podcast, it's Paul O'Neill. Sadly, that won't be possible because he is no longer with us. But Paul O'Neill has a special place in my heart because he personifies a really fantastic case study all around the benefits of what this podcast is all about, being proactive in safety and risk management. If you've not heard the story of Paul O'Neill and Alcoa, it's brilliantly told in this book, which I'm holding up for those of you on the YouTube to see, called The Power of Habit. And there's a chapter in there about this. But essentially, Paul O'Neill took over as CEO of Alcoa, which is a aluminium manufacturing business in the States. And he stood up in his very first shareholder meeting, and it started off pretty badly, you might argue, because he started talking about safety. And obviously, that's not what CEOs typically talk about. But his view, as he'll tell us in this clip, which I'm going to share with you, is that safety, as he puts it, shouldn't be a priority, it should be a precondition. So he actually puts safety first, and not in the way that almost every company does by saying safety is our number one priority. As he says, it's not a priority, it's a precondition. So everything was focused on safety, 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 safety. And they lived it and they breathed it. And over the 15 years of his tenure, the company grew significantly. The profitability of the company increased sevenfold, massive, and safety performance improved. It was already good, but it improved even further by something like 90% as well. So Paul O'Neill talked the talk on safety, but he walked the walk on safety. And that's why I thought this clip of a speech he gave explaining some of his hypotheses and some of the reasoning behind his approach would be a great one to share this Christmas. As and when you do listen or watch to this, I wish you all the best for a Merry Christmas and a happy 2022. Been really great spending some time with you on the podcast this year. If you are in the festive spirit, the one thing I would ask from you as a member of the audience is a review, because that really does help to spread the word. So if you're feeling festive over a mince pie, a glass of wine or a beer or something, and you've got a spare couple of minutes, hop onto iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called nowadays, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And as long as you think we've earned it, give us a 5-star review, and that would be very, very much appreciated. With that then, I'm going to pass over to the guest that I'd love to have, but sadly can't, Paul O'Neill, and you can listen to him, and I'm sure you'll learn something from this and find this really valuable. Cheers.
So maybe a place to begin is to explain a little bit about how I got interested in safety, and to put it in context, because for me, safety is an element of a broader set of philosophical ideas about human beings. When I got recruited, it was actually in April of 1987, and I agreed to go to work on the 15th of June, so I had 3 months to think about, what is it I'm going to do when I go and I'm supposed to be the leader for this huge worldwide organization, which is really a privilege to have an opportunity to consolidate ideas and say to yourself, What is it that you're going to do, and what is it you want to be remembered for when you leave? And at the top of my list was safety. Now, you might wonder, why would I put safety, and it needs some explanation. I think in a great organization, this is out of 40 years worth of experience, in an organization, let me say this correctly, that has the potential for greatness, it's possible every day for every human being in that enterprise to say yes to 3 questions without any reservations. So here are the 3 questions. Are you treated with dignity and respect every day by everyone you encounter? You know, sounds fairly simple. Maybe some of you say, absolutely. You know, most organizations, I have to tell you, it's hard for people to get by the first question because there are still elements that you can see in behavioral patterns, the way people interact with each other, that cause people not to be treated with the same uniform level of dignity and respect because of their race or their gender or their nationality or their relatively higher or lower level of educational attainment, or most importantly maybe their rank in the organization. So I believe in an organization with a potential for true greatness, none of those characteristics have anything to do with the dignity and respect that every individual is accorded. The second question is, are you given the things you need, tools, equipment, training, encouragement, so that you can make a contribution? This is the most important part of number 2. That gives meaning to your life. You know, it's not about making this a more famous, financially successful place. It's about, does every individual find themselves in a position they can say every day without any reservation, the work I do here gives meaning to my life. I don't have to find it in fishing or golf or painting or some other outside thing. I get meaning in my life from what I spend most of my waking hours doing. That's a hard test too. But I believe it's the right test for an organization with a potential for greatness. The third question is short and simple, and that is, do you get recognized for what you do? You know, around the world, in all the countries I've worked in, no matter what level of educational attainment people have, may not even be able to say back to you what I just did in characterizing this landscape of human interaction. People want those things, not, you know, it's the human lifeblood that is the most important asset. Now, how did I get to safety at the top of my list in April of 1987? By observing that most organizations say our human beings are our most important asset, but in most places there's no proof it's really true. It's just something you say. So I'll tell you the numbers. In June the 15th of 1987, the lost workday rate across Alcoa's operations in 43 countries or so was 1.86. The rate in 1987 is staggering. It was 5. 5 out of every 100 workers in the American workforce had an injury at work that caused them to miss at least one day of work. Alcoa is 1.86, and the safety director was obviously really proud of how great Alcoa was. And so after I ended up praising Charlie DeMesha, who was the safety director, then I said to him, you know, Charlie, I believe our goal, and I'm going to begin saying this all over Alcoa, so you should know. I'm going to begin saying that it's Alcoa's objective that people who work for Alcoa will never be hurt at work. So our goal is going to be 0. Even the safety director was startled by the idea that 0 would be our goal. And it was interesting. You know, I found this about lots of different things, that there's kind of a litany of reasons why not, right? So the first reason why not is we can't afford it. You know, in order to really get to 0, we're going to have to wrap every employee in some kind of a cocoon, and they won't be able to move their arms to do the work. So we can't afford it. Here's one that's really an awful one, and it has a lot of traveling power. Human beings are not capable of being perfect, and that means we're going to have human error no matter how much you don't like it. And so we can't get to zero because people will do stupid things. Those are the two most potent reasons why not. So I said, I don't know how good the informal communication system is in Alcoa, but I hope you all have already heard that I believe we should achieve an incident-free workplace at Alcoa. And I want you to know I'm really serious about this. And so I turned to the supervisory crowd and I said to them, here's what I mean by this. As soon as we identify anything in our work environment that could lead to an Alcoa employee being hurt at work, I want to fix it. Right now. I don't want to budget it. From now on, we are not going to budget safety. We're going to follow our recognition of things that could harm people, and we're going to fix it. Oftentimes, the things that move organizations are unfortunately not happy stories. But after I've been there, about 3 months, I guess, there was an incident at an extrusion plant outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And the circumstance, this is a night shift. There's an 18-year-old kid who'd worked for the company for about 3 weeks, and he jumped over a protective barrier that was almost as high as this. It wasn't solid, but it was a high barrier between his observation space and the machine that was producing extrusions, and this particular machine had a boom on it, and so with every cycle, the boom would cycle, and the machine was subject to jamming. The aluminum material would get jammed in the machine, it would be hung up. And this kid jumped over the barrier and pulled the scrap material out of the action part of the machine, and it released the boom. It came around, hit him in the head, killed him instantly. He had a wife who was 6 months pregnant. 2 supervisors who'd been there 15 or 20 years watched him do it. Actually, they must have taught him how to do it, because I don't think he made it up on his own. They jump over the barrier and pull the material out of the machine. And so I got the whole executive crowd together all the way down to the plant supervisor level. And we reviewed the diagrams and the machine process and all of that. And when we were done with that technical part, I stood up and said to the assembled crowd, we killed him. Yeah, the supervisors were there, but we killed him. I killed him. Because I didn't do a good job of communicating the dedication of the principle that people will never be hurt at work. And obviously, our recruiting process didn't do a very good job, or our measurement process didn't do a very good job of assuring that people who were in this chain believed that safety was the single most important thing, actually not a priority. This is my counsel to you. Safety should never be a priority. It should be a precondition. Like before you can get up and walk around, you have to breathe. Safety should be like breathing. It should be a precondition for organizational behavior. I tell you what, the people in the organization were stunned by the idea that they should accept personal responsibility for this death. They all regret it. I tell you, there was never more caring organization in my experience in a traditional sense than Alcoa, Every person that was injured or killed, they mourned. Believe me, they really mourned and they regretted it and all of that, but they didn't understand. They were responsible for it. Yesterday morning, the lost workday rate at Alcoa around the world was 0.126, which is pretty good, but I wish it were 0.